Hello, everybody. Welcome to Derda Fest episode 2. Tonight we are going to have one of my favorite bands, or one of the guitarists and singers for one of my favorite bands, Elephants and Stars from Canada. So pretty soon we're going to bring on Manfred Sittmann. Sorry. You know what? Now's is a good time, Vinny, to promote Old Forester Bourbon. Derda Fest is brought to you by Old Forester. They don't sponsor this or give me money, but without them, it wouldn't happen. So I'll be drinking that tonight. And I'm going to bring on Manfred in just a minute. Just so everybody knows, if you're new to Derda Fest, this is a monthly series. Monthly-ish. I'm a little busy, but we're trying to get there. A monthly series for independent artists that I interview and showcase from the Twitter community. Mostly last episode, the very first episode, was Stuart Gersman of the great Austin, Texas band Bottle Cap Mountain. Tonight, we've got Manfred Sittmann from Elephants and Stars up in Canada. Next month, November, we're going to have another Canadian band. Trailer Hawk is going to join us. Really excited about that. And then don't think I'm forgetting about you, Bubble Made Imagination, the Negatrons, Eric Linden. We'll all get you on too. I've got big plans, so stay tuned. All right. So cheers, everybody, if you're drinking with us. All right. One more quick shout out tonight for my boy Jeffrey Brower. I've got the Derda Fest tee on. All right, I see Becky. Becky's on Bottle Cap Mountain. All right, so here we go, Derda Fest. So I'm gonna start things off real quick with a song, and this is a very, very kind of special song for people who are on Derda Fest tonight. If you're getting an exclusive, because I've worked on this song, but I revised it today and have been, if I can get my lyrics in a place where I can see them. I've been working on this for a while. I want to get everybody's feedback of whether or not this song is stupid. So I need your guys' help to tell me. This is a song called Wild Roses. And I will preface it too. For like 2 weeks, I've had the craziest sinus infection. So I'm not sounding all that great. But I'm going to see how it goes. We'll see. It might sound terrible. But let's give it a shot here. This song is about, what I'm worried about is that the song doesn't have a lot of context if you don't know the story. And the story is, my grandfather's last name is Rose. And they used to call him and his brothers the Wild Roses. And one of his brothers would never go to school. Like, just his brother Junior, who was older than him, just never would go to the schoolhouse. And my grandfather's mom always made him go. And he didn't get it. He goes, why do you not care if, my brothers and sisters, especially Junior, doesn't go to school, but you care so much if I go to school? And she said to him, you're the only one who's got any smarts. You're the only one who's going to make something of yourself. So she made him go to school, didn't care if the other ones did. But I wrote this song kind of about that and taking it for a test drive. So let's see here. Let's see. This is the debut of Wild Roses. If I can get my lyrics in a position where I can see them. Gotta get the effects on so I sound good. wiped her hands off on her apron and sat down next to me on the bed. She said, boy, when your daddy gets home, you might find yourself dead. Mama, how come you don't care about none of them others going to school? Listen, son, you are the only one who's gonna make something of themselves. And she said, can't plant wild roses, have to go where they want. And she said, can't plant wild roses, have to go where they want. There ain't much up here on Jordan Mountain. You can live while you die. You're worth much more than you could sell your soul for. Thought I saw a tear welling up in her eye. She stood up, folded her arms as she made her way towards the door. You're gonna get yourself an education. I don't want to talk no more. And she said, can't plant wild roses, have to go where they want. And she said, can't plant wild roses, have to go where they want. And she said, can't plant wild roses, they have to grow where they want. And she said, can't plant wild roses, have to grow where they want. Have to grow where they want. All right. Thank you. So, Twitter music community, that is for you to tell me, is that a keeper or not? So leave it in the comments if you like that, if I should keep working on it. Tell me if you didn't like it so I don't embarrass myself. If you're watching this after the fact, let me know in the comments of the YouTube. Yeah. Before we get over to my man Manfred from Elephants and Stars, I got to do one for Becky Doolin. And also special shout out to Joe Murphy and his wife Kim for coming all the way up from Champaign-Urbana to see me and Jeremy Porter and Nick Leet at the Law Office Pub. I don't mind stealing bread from the mouths of decadence. I can't feed on the powerless, cup's already overfilled. But it's on the table, the fire's cooking, and the farmer babies and slaves are working. But it's on the table, the mouse are choking. I'm not hungry. I'm going hungry. That was for you, Becky. And then for the Negatrons. If I leave here tomorrow, would you still remember me? That's all I'm gonna do, but you got it. I did it for you. Okay, is everybody ready? Let's do this thing. So, hey, Brian Adamick, thank you for joining, my friend, from the band The Strugs here in Chicago. Everybody give a warm round of applause to Brian Adamick, everybody. All right, and with that, welcome our guest for this evening, Manfred Sittmann from Elephants and Stars. All right, thank you for joining
everybody.
us.
Glad to be here. And I don't know if you saw, but I wrote in the comments that first song's a keeper for sure.
Thank you, man. That's literally finished this afternoon with a sinus infection.
Got a bit of a Ben Nichols vibe to it.
Cool. I gotta work on a little bit of the phrasing, but we'll I'll keep it going. Thank you. You're the only feedback I've gotten, so I just assume that's everybody's now.
Yeah, it's 100%.
Yeah. So how's it been going? How are things?
Things have been really good. I mean, we're in a bit of a downtime in between, sort of with all the quote unquote work we did for the last record is kind of wound down. It sort of is what it is now, and we've submitted our songs for the next record. I actually had a very frank conversation with our producer today, who called me up with a few very pointed suggestions about things he feels we need to work on.
Oh yeah.
As usual, he's right. So we're gonna get together tomorrow and go over some of that stuff. But yeah, I'm excited to go. I mean, you're probably similar. I always want to go on to the next thing, the next song, the next record. Like once a record comes out, I almost kind of don't want to hear the songs on it anymore, which is kind of weird when you go to play live and people are like, oh, play this. I was like, what? I was like, on the last record.
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned that, because I did a poll recently on because we've got a backlog of stuff that we're working on, but so far it's like pretty much the 3 are on the streaming services and asked people about like which one's your favorite, and it was like for a while there was overwhelmingly like Betsy Lane, which was our first song, which was like one I thought like it was the very first song I wrote in like my current style that, and I was almost like, oh shit, am I not gonna be able to top that? But yeah, I have a tendency to obsess over like I take too long with the songs because I want to make them perfect, and I need to move on more of that. But what I was going to actually ask you about this is like I think your records sound great. Like,
well, thanks.
You hear them and it's like, oh my god, this is like it's one of those records where you hear it and you're like, this is like the real deal. Like this is a real sounding record. Like the songs are good, the instrumentation is good, everything's great about it.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of that does come down to, with whom you're working in terms of a producer. The first record we did is kind of a hodgepodge. Like basically there was no producer. It was just sort of myself and the engineer and us kicking ideas around. Whereas the more recent record, Dreamland, we did with a producer named Ian Blurton, who some people might know. He produced all the Weaker Thans records. So if anyone knows the Weaker Thans, he did all of their records, and he did a Los Low record, who are my favorite band. And he did, he was in a band called Change of Heart and a band called Come On, and all of the records sound amazing. It's funny, he doesn't actually know this. So he was in a band called Change of Heart when I was still in school. And I actually had an autographed poster of him on my wall that I got that he doesn't remember giving me. So I wouldn't tell him about that because I already sort of have to keep myself in check, the best of times. But yeah, he's a total pro. When he comes in with his ideas, he's like, you bring him these songs and he's like, okay, well, these are the ones we're going to do. And this one he's got a great ear for where an edit needs to happen or where a rearrangement needs to happen. So I think I'm a little bit different than you insofar as you were just saying you like to work on a song until it's perfect. I'm not like that. Like I kind of just like the rough, like the pencil sketch of the song, the skeleton. I'm like, these will be the chords and we'll go in here and then there'll be a chorus. And then really, I don't like to take it much further than that, because then once the band gets involved, like they start having ideas and it's going to maybe go in this direction. And then once a producer comes in, they're making all kinds of changes from tempos to phrasings to whatever. So yeah, I try to not get too locked in on stuff like that. Someone told me once that if you really want to have a good relationship with the producer, you kind of have to give yourself over to them a little bit. You can't be too protective of your stuff. And we actually had, just before we went in to record with Ian, our last drummer quit because when Ian sent back the feedback, his reaction at the time was like, well, who is this person to tell me anything or to tell us anything? I said, well, they're the person we hired to tell us this stuff. I mean, we're not legally obligated to do it, but I mean, you're bringing them in for their expertise. You'd be kind of foolish not to listen. So he's just like, no, I'm out. I was like, oh, all right.
Wow.
Yeah, it was like the 2 weeks before we were supposed to record.
Yeah. Are you the main songwriter too for the band?
Well, I mean, main insofar as only. And it's not by any sort of dictatorship. It just kind of always worked out that way.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I'm even kind of the front person by default. I never really wanted to front a band per se. I always kind of wanted to be more like a Noel Gallagher, where someone else is in the front and I just play guitar and maybe write the songs. But no one else ever wanted. From my first band in grade 8 and grade 9, no one wanted to front it. So I was like, I'll do it.
Yeah, I always wanted to front the band, but never wanted to play like lead guitar. Like I never had a desire to play any guitar solo ever. Like I just played chords, and then it's kind of like out of necessity, I had to just pick up. Like you end up being in a 3-piece. It's like, well, I guess I got to be a lead guitar player now.
Oh yeah, we were a 3-piece forever. So all of the leads on our records are me. And
wow,
I'm not a particularly gifted guitar player. Like I really got to work at that stuff. Like you want to talk about like working on something over and over. Like when it comes to solos, I'm not a guy who just sits down and like can rip through them. So we're a 5-piece now, and we have a lead guitar player who is like what I would call a legitimate lead guitar player. Like he comes in and his riffs sound 10 times better than mine. He's way more talented. He's way more ability. Doesn't talk. He's great.
So I've learned a couple things tonight already. I need a lead guitar player and a producer. I've actually never worked with a producer before. I think there's definitely like editing I need to do with my songwriting. And there's a guy that was in a band in Chicago that people probably know, Lucky Boys Confusion, and he does a little bit of like they've got a studio here in and like a practice space in Naperville. It's called Sound Summit, and I just started going there, and he does like a little bit of consultation on that, and he's pretty like known as a good songwriter and structure of songs. So I think I'm going to take advantage of that for this next batch of songs, because I noticed I have a tendency to like make my songs too long. It's one.
Well, so do I. I mean, like if you look at, I'm pointing at a screen that you can't see. If you look at the Dreamland records, like every song is like right at 3:20. They all went in at like 4:30, 4:45, and he's like, chop this here. You only need it once. We'll only put it in the second thing. Let's cut that solo in half. And then like I'm big in like intros and re-intros and outros. Right. He's like, nope, gone. Like the song starts now. What did he say to me once? He said, listen, with the music you guys play, it's got to be every verse has to be a chorus. He goes, you have to think of every bit of your song as like has to be catchy and short and to the point and get on. I think where a producer can be really valuable, A, in terms of editing, but B, just in terms of sort of like hearing, you write in your own style and you're in your own head. Sometimes it's good for someone to say, oh, you know what else would sound good here? And it's just something you've never thought of before. And again, you don't have to take the advice. I remember we were recording, what song was it? Ceasefire. And there's a part at the end where I repeat this line. The chorus is going ceasefire, blah, 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 blah. And then I keep saying, don't know a thing about it, or can't remember. I don't remember the exact line I'm saying. But while we were doing it, we were just doing vocal takes. And he said, could you just say that line over and over? And I go, like here, and we sort of went back and forth. And I said, yeah. And then so I did it. And I go, I don't think that sounds very good. And he goes, just try it again. And I tried it. And I, of course, being a moron, I was like, what if we did this other idea that I had? And he's like, let's just try mine. And we kind of went back and forth, but that phrasing is actually my favorite part of the whole record. That little idea he had, whenever it comes on, I'm like, that's the best thing we've done. And it wasn't even us, it was him.
Wow. That's awesome. So then, I was just going to say, so let's like Ceasefire, like how do you bring that song in? Cause that's one of my favorite songs of yours.
Thanks. We and here's another thing a producer will do for you. It's now a song that I like more. When I first wrote it, I didn't like it at all. It's kind of a dumb story. I heard it. I woke up with it in my head. I had that melody of whatever the chorus melody is. I had it in my head. I didn't have any words for it, and I kind of kept singing it all day. And I was like, I think that's catchy. And then when we started playing it, I just remember it was our old drummer and Mike, our bass player. We would play it, and I'd be like, "This song's." It's kind of like what you're saying. I was like, "This song sounds stupid. Like this sounds like a dumb song. Like the melody sounds really childish. Like I don't like it. I don't want to do it anymore." And so they said, "Well, we were just getting ready to submit some songs to Ian." And they said, "Well, let's just submit it. I think we at the time sent him like 12 songs or something like that." And Ian came right back. He said, "No, that one we're definitely doing." And I was like, really? Like, are you serious? Like, I was almost horrified at the thought of doing it. But then he took it and he kind of started reshaping it. And, he added the key change part. And actually that song is the one song where I don't play the guitar solo. Ian played it because he's an amazing guitar player. And I was listening to a ton of White Reaper at the time. And and I don't know if you know them, but they have this very Thin Lizzy guitar style with the harmonic guitar solos. Mm. And I said, oh my God, I would love to I was like, blah, blah, blah. And he was just kind of like rolling his eyes going, uh-huh. And then I said, just in a totally unrelated conversation, I said to him, "Oh, would you play something on this record? Like just so I could say Ian Blurton played on my record, because that would be super cool to me personally. And, that'd be like my little small version of success." And he said, "Yeah, sure." And then one day we went out for lunch. Myself and Mike went to pick up lunch. We came back and he was just putting his guitar away. And he just, he turned the board up. He goes, "What do you think of this?" And it's that dual harmonic guitar solo that's in Ceasefire. And he goes, there's your White Reaper solo. And he just walked out of the room. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, it was, that was cool.
Yeah. Well, I want to make sure you also get a chance to play some songs. I'm sure everybody's waiting for it. Well, I want to talk more about like the studio.
Sure.
Time, because this is super. I'm like really fascinated by this, and it's very timely because I have a song exactly like that you're talking about, where I wrote it. It's a song called Exit Sign. And we kind of like started playing it in the band, and I'm like, I think this song kind of sucks. And then the rest of the band's like, no, this one's good. They like love it. And we played it live one time, and I remember like thinking like, I even made a joke at the audience like, it's gonna be up to you guys if this one stays in or not, because I'm on the fence. And then we played it, and I remember getting done, and like in the middle of the song, I realized I just said like, I don't know why I don't like this song. It sounds like every other song we have. Like, that's probably why I don't like it. But yeah. Let's hear some of your tunes. I'm sure everybody has been on the edge of their seat waiting. So
just before we do that, though, I wanted to ask you, how much weight do you put on the opinions of your band members? Like for me, I use Mike, our bass player, is my ultimate litmus test. He's like whatever like the male equivalent of a muse would be for me. Like if he doesn't like something, it makes me think, all right, this is no good, even if I do like it. And conversely, the fact that he liked Ceasefire made me go like, all right, well, maybe there's something there, because I trust his taste more than my own, probably.
That's a good question. I played with my drummer forever, so he just like, it's funny. He's always just like, whatever you tell me to play. I don't care. I'm just happy to be here. So that I can't really rely on that. The people I rely on more, because I also play a lot of like solo acoustic, is I'll run a lot of stuff by my wife, especially like final mixes too, because she's not a musician. So she'll hear things from somebody who's like, from a standpoint of somebody who's actually like going to listen to it with fresh ears. And so when it gets to a point where I'm like, I think this might be done, I'll let her hear it, and it either gets a thumbs down or like you'll get something where it's like, all right, I gotta fix that. And then also my neighbor who plays in our band sometimes, I'll like, because he'll be pretty honest about like, no, that sucks.
Well, you need that though, you know what I mean? Like, and that's, you almost don't need a producer. You just have that guy, because that's really what a producer tells you all the time. Like, I remember the first we were gonna submit some demos for a grant, and I sent some songs to Ian. I'm like, these are the songs I'm thinking of submitting, and he emailed me back, and the email was 2 words, and it just said, "Keep writing." So I'll take a page out of your book. I'll play some new stuff that we've submitted for the new record.
Awesome.
I don't know if it's going to be on the record, because we basically have handed that over to Ian. We basically said, here's 9-10 songs we feel pretty good about. You pick the ones you want to work with. And besides, if anyone wants to hear anything off Dreamland, they can, or the first one, Recovery, they can just go listen to it anytime they want. So
that's right. It's on Apple Music and Spotify, Bandcamp. So go
all those things that don't pay you. It's everywhere.
That's right. Go to the Bandcamp one, or iTunes. Go to Bandcamp or iTunes if you're gonna.
Yeah, I heard those are the 2 best ones.
Yeah.
But so there's a couple of like real kind of hard rocker ones that I don't think are gonna translate to this format, because it involves another guitar player like riffing out and stuff. So I'm going to play a song called Morning Winter Sky, just in case my friend Tracy's on this chat. She always said that she liked this one when we played it live one time. So I'm going to give this one a shot.
All right. This is for you, Tracy.
And anyone else. All right. You say you won't cross that line. You'd wait and hope and then decide. It's just a neck and a noose, baby. Yeah, you know that it's all mine. There's not a second to lose, baby. Early morning, winter sky. It's just a matter of time. You'd wait for the worst in time. One more descent and then decline. It's just a neck and a noose, baby. Yeah, you know that it's all mine. There's not a second to lose, baby. Early morning, winter sky. It's just a matter of time. It's just a neck and a noose, baby. Yeah, you know that it's all mine. There's not a second to lose, baby. Early morning, winter sky. It's just a neck and a noose, baby. Yeah, you know that it's all mine. There's not a second to lose, baby. Early morning, winter sky. It's just a matter of time. Matter of time. It's just a matter of time. Matter of time.
That was awesome. That was great. I'm looking forward to hearing that. I mean, I think it's a keeper. So you said that to Ian?
We did send it to Ian. He didn't mention it by name on the phone today. I do this sort of little, I don't know if it's passive aggressive, but I do this move because I don't ever want him to feel like I'm trying to tell him what to do.
Yeah.
So I'll send him like these little update emails where I'll be like, hey, we played Morning Winter Sky in rehearsal last night. It sounded really good. I don't know if you care about that, but it is sounding kind of cool. Whenever you decide on your songs, that's fine. But, you know.
Yeah.
And,
yeah.
We did this other. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, tell him I said it needs to get on there.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, I'm sure if I pushed for anything, he would just be like, fine, I don't care. So I know that he's already got there's a couple that he's let me know that he wants for sure. And they're the more hard rocking ones because he likes that stuff. He says we do that stuff better than our mid-tempo stuff. But when I got out of, so before Elephants and Stars, I was in a band called The First Time, and everything with that band was 100 miles an hour. Like we were just like, we were getting nominated for this thing in Toronto called the TIMA Awards, Toronto Independent Music Awards, and we were getting nominated for like best punk record of the year and like best, you know, whatever punk this and punk that. And I thought like I didn't even realize we had sort of morphed that far. But if anyone wants to go listen to that record, it moves. And I just kind of I felt like we got into a place where we had one sound and we just kept cranking it. Where now I kind of feel like I'd rather, you know, if we want to do a mid-tempo one or a slower one, or, you know, I threw up a thing on Twitter, one of the sort of I don't like to call it rejects, but one of the songs that didn't make it on the recovery. It's got kind of like a country feel with like a country piano run in it today. It didn't make it on the record, but I still want to be able to write that stuff,
Yeah.
whenever I want.
Yeah. I've actually been working on a lot of stuff recently that's like totally different. So I totally get that feeling
Yeah,
of wanting to
even
just
if it's
play.
just for you.
Yeah, exactly. There's something about like I did that. I could do it. Like, yeah. I wanted to do that. I got it out of me. It may not
Yeah,
have
and,
legs, but
and
I got it out.
and for me, sometimes I don't know if you've ever had really bad writer's block, but
Yeah.
I find for me when I get writer's block, one exercise I do is I'll listen to one band, doesn't matter who they are. I'll listen to like 4 or 5 of their songs, and I'll be like, just write a song that rips off that band, like just copy the style of that band, and then you do it. And, it's not something you'd ever put out, but as you're doing it, you're like, oh, you know what? This little chord change or this thing now sparks an idea to kind of push you
Yeah.
off somewhere else. So that's a little thing I do all the time. I assign myself a band, and I'm like, you have to write a Weezer song or you have to write a whatever song, and they're terrible, but it does usually sort of jolt you out of it.
Yeah, that's a really good tip too, because I haven't done that to get out of like writer's block, but I've done it where I've tried to play a song by ear, like, oh, let me try to figure that out. And then you come up with like, you don't play it right, but then it's like, oh, that might be something.
Yeah,
You
or
got a whole
sometimes.
new song.
Yeah, sometimes I do that too, where I'll even be listening to a song that I like, and they'll do a part that I don't like, and I'd be like, oh, I wouldn't have done it that way. And I'll go and I'll be like, this is how I would have written it. And then you're kind of half stealing their
Yeah.
song idea or whatever.
I actually wanted to. This is a good segue because I wanted to ask about your songwriting process. And Becky actually had a question about
Hi, Becky.
the song Carolina and how
Okay.
how did that song come about? What's the reference? How'd you write it?
The song Carolina is the one I was just talking about. That was the one I threw up on Twitter. It didn't make it onto recovery, although it was done in those sessions. The piano was done by a guy named Dave McKinnon, who was he's a producer from here, but he's also been in a bunch of bands like the Fembots, and I don't know if it'd be anybody you would know, but so actually. That is a good segue because that song originally came about as me trying to write a song in the spirit of another song. So I kind of unabashedly, and I don't know if this is cool or not or nerdy or not. I depends on who the audience is. I love the song from Shrek, "Accidentally in Love" by Counting Crows. I love it. Because I'll tell you, most of the music I listen, well, a lot of the music probably both of us listen to is like, it's sad, it's brooding, people are disappointed, hearts are getting broken, blah, blah, blah. And that stuff, I don't want to say it's easy, but it's easier. It's easier to sound deep when you're sort of brooding about something or other. And listen, I can brood with the best of them, but when you can hear a song, and Teenage Fan Club is pretty good at this too, when you can hear a song that is just so shamelessly optimistic and still sound good, I'm like, okay, I want to try to write a song that does, because I've tried it before. I once tried writing a Christmas song. This is, I swear to God, true story. A friend of mine goes, oh, you should write a Christmas song. So I started writing the song. By the end of the song, it was a guy going to his girlfriend's house on Christmas Eve and killing himself in her driveway. And it's like, all right, you got to pump the brakes on that stuff. So I just wanted to write a really kind of optimistic love song, kind of like, let's throw caution on the wind and fall in love sort of song. So Carolina, I was originally using the name, it's a play on the name Caroline, but I think the germ of that song started, a prior band had just played in Carolina. We had played in like Raleigh, or not Raleigh. What's the other one? Not Charlotte, not Raleigh. The one where all the high tech companies are.
Charlotte?
Is that Raleigh? Charlotte? No. Anyway, it's one of those.
Durham,
Where's
Winston-Salem, Wilmington.
Where's Ben Folds from? Ben Folds.
Is he
from that place?
Okay. It's one of those. It's got to be one of the Asheville.
Oh, no, he's from Chapel Hill. He's from
Oh,
Chapel.
Chapel Hill. Gotcha. Yeah.
Right. So we were playing somewhere down there, and I always thought like, oh, Carolina, it's a state, the pun, the play, whatever. Because I like using a girl's name for the sake. This song is actually not about anyone specifically. It's just sort of about that feeling of like, okay, I've met someone. Let's go. Let's do it. Let's go head first into this. And that's kind of where that song came from. And I think on that degree, it sort of worked. I'll tell you a funny story about why I didn't make it on the album. It's because we were auditioning keyboard players to come join our band. This is years ago, like 3-4 years ago. And I had just done the demo for Carolina, I think. And we had this guy come in, and the only song he knew of ours to play was Carolina. He had learned that little ding, 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 ding piano line. And I swear to God, we played that song 12, 13 times in a row for this guy's quote unquote audition. And I think by the end, when he left, I just looked at Mike and I said, I'm never playing that song again. I hate that song. I actually didn't listen to it for years. I listened to it maybe for the first time like 6 months ago. After years of I couldn't even listen to it. So, but I think I sort of made peace with it now.
So when you sit down to write a song, like, even if you're not in writer's block, like, where do you get your inspiration from? How do you kind of like start with your songs?
I mean, it's as you can imagine, it's different every time. Like sometimes you'll sit down and you'll just be kind of strumming around and you'll kind of go your old faithful chords that you like. Like for me, I like a lot of, G to E minor or C to A minor. Like
me too.
One of those progressions that like you can sing anything over it and it sounds amazing. And you'll throw a C and a D in there or whatever. And you're just kind of noodling. And sometimes you'll hear like a melody, or sometimes a lot of time for me, I'll have one line or two lines of a lyric, and I'll just sort of sing that over all the different parts. And I'll try to just sort of like, you just sort of cobble it together. And I don't, by choice, I never record it, because my feeling is if it's good, I'll remember it. And if I don't remember it, it was no good. So generally, if I play a song a few times, I'll just kind of scribble the chords down. I have like a notepad that I just sort of say G. It would look like a mental patient's diary. It's like G's and arrows and quote marks and like one line of a lyric or whatever. And then usually I'll give it a title, and then I'll try to actually write the lyrics to that title. So here's an example. So I had this song that I liked, and I had these sort of words that sort of were just kind of nothing, placeholder words. I think it was something like, oh, if you see me in the city, just look the other way or something like that.
Yeah.
And then I heard a story. I guess I can tell it. It's not my story, but someone told it on the radio. So I think I'm free to tell it. So my favorite band of all time is a band called Los de Lo. They're from Toronto. They were like indie rock legends in Toronto. And I worship those guys. Like they basically changed the way, like when I saw them, I had just graduated high school, and I thought, okay, I didn't even know that bands like this existed anymore. I was just blown away. And I ended up getting to know them. And in fact, their singer recorded most of Recovery. Like it's him doing backup vocals, and it's him, just kind of helping out. And which for me was a thrill that, as a middle-aged person, you don't get that thrilled anymore. Like you don't really fan out when you're 40, whatever. But I have to admit, like if 19-year-old me had sort of known that was coming, he would have freaked out. And I just heard him doing an interview on the radio where, do you know the band? Have you ever heard of a band from Canada, a punk band called Propaganda?
Yes, I have heard of them.
Okay, so they're a fairly well-known punk band from here. In fact, the guy from the Weaker Thans used to be the bass player in Propaganda.
Oh, okay.
So the singer in Propaganda is this guy named Chris Hanna. And I found out that in the 90s, I guess before the advent of the internet, Ron from Los de Lo and Chris Hanna used to be pen pals. They used to write letters to each other because they were fans of one another's bands. And I don't know why, I became obsessed with this idea of two guys in bands I like letter writing. I don't know
Yeah.
why, and maybe because they're both such good lyricists or both good writers. And I just started picturing, wow, like what must have those letters have been like because they're both so political and they're both so educated and they're both so, not verbose, articulate. And I just had in my head. So I wrote this song, and it's just called Letters to Chris Hanna. And it's just basically about them finally meeting after this letter writing campaign. And that's really the extent of it. Like you have this idea, and then you kind of have this other inspiration. You just kind of like, MacGyver them together, and that becomes a song. That's really how most of my stuff sort of works.
That's
It's
awesome.
usually two things kind of coming together.
And for anybody who's under the age of 30 watching this, letters are texts that you used to put on paper and
you would write them on paper, and you put them in an envelope, and you'd physically pay money to put them in a box, and someone would come get them and then take them to someone else that lived somewhere far away. It almost seems insane now.
Yeah, and Becky actually asked a follow-up question for this, but I'll go and answer because I know the answer for every songwriter to this question is it's going to be different every time. But there's always this question with songwriting of which comes first, lyric or melody or music. For me, it is 100% leans on the music side. Like I've had songs that like the structure and everything is there for the whole song. I might even have a guitar solo I've written, still don't have the lyrics finished. Like that lyrics are way harder for me for whatever reason, or either like there'll be those songs where it's like I'll sit down and the whole thing will be done in 10 minutes and it just came out of me.
I think the best songs come out that way.
Yes.
There's nothing you can do to control it, but I will tell you, the songs that I've slaved over forever, I'm never happy with them. Like they never hit a point where I'm like, boom, they're perfect.
And you know what I try to do to combat that too, because I know that's what's going to happen, is I won't sit there and like force it. So if it's not coming, I don't do it. And that's why it takes so long, is because I figured out that's what happens is like if you force it, you have words and lyrics that you're just like, well, that's shit.
They're terrible.
Yeah,
they're absolutely. Yeah. So I'm the same. Like for me, the music will always come first. Like a lyrical idea might exist, but to me, if I don't have a melody that I'm happy with, I don't care. Like you could be Leonard Cohen, or whoever is a good lyricist. Excuse me. And it doesn't matter. Like for me, like I have a rule with lyrics, both with mine and with bands that I listen to. Like they don't have to be good or great. They just can't be bad. Like I can't hear them go, oh my God, really? Like when I can predict the word you're gonna rhyme with, that's probably not a good thing. Like when it's like blah 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 pain, blah 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 insane, blah 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 dance, blah. Like I just don't want to do that. Like I'm not gonna sit here and say like I'm, I'm trying to think of who lyricists, like my favorite lyricists are mostly people probably no one has heard of, because I tend to really gravitate to some obscure bands. But I once got in an argument. Actually, I wouldn't mind getting your take on this. I once got in an argument with a friend of mine who's also in a band who I really like. And they're actually opening for Lowest to Low instead of us in December, but that's another story.
I already take your side then.
Yeah, no. So this is the argument. They're a great band. I love them. I'm actually going to go see it. But we were talking about lyrics once, and I was talking about a song that captured a feeling that I think everybody's had. The mood of the song was, life's passing you by very quickly. You're not accomplishing anything. You're kind of wandering home from a bar late at night saying like, I've just wasted another day. And it's sort of written really eloquently. And I was saying like, oh my God, like that's such a good lyric because we can, like, he captures that feeling we've all had. And my friend turned around and says, no, that's what makes it a bad lyric. And I go, what are you talking about? And he said, of course everyone can relate to that. He goes, what is that adding to culture? Nothing. He said, I'd rather have a lyric that makes me think of something I've never thought of before. And I have to be honest, at the time I thought he was nuts. But then since then I thought about it, and I still think it's great to capture that universal feeling if you can do it in a really eloquent way. But I will give him points. Like, it's one of the few times in an argument I kind of left going, maybe I'm wrong and he's right.
Yeah, that's a good conundrum, because it is like music can be a little bit like therapy, and I think I was actually thinking a little bit about this today. For whatever reason, I've been diving into the lyrics that like Eddie Vedder writes,
Mm-hmm.
and I think he's like a really underappreciated like lyricist.
Mm-hmm.
And there was things like that. Like, I think, yeah, there's songs that make you think of something or think of something in a different way that you may not have thought before, and that can be powerful. But
Mm-hmm.
there's also something too about like encapsulating. It's kind of like a joke, right? Of like, the reason why a comedian to you is funny and a joke is funny is because they're saying something. The punchline is something that you couldn't have thought of. If it's
Yeah.
if it is if they set up the punchline and it's something that you've already thought in your head, it's not going to be funny. That's why people are hacks.
Yes.
And that's what makes a good joke, is it has to be something the audience themselves couldn't have thought of.
Yeah.
And that,
That's such a great point. Like that is like, because I love watching comedians and I love the craft of comedy, and I
yeah,
think that the good ones are just like, I don't like to throw the word genius around, but whatever a better word for that is. And then you see ones that are hacky and they're like, oh, women drive like this and men drive like this, and you're like, really? Like, you're still working that old?
yeah, yeah. It's funny because I wish music was my career. It's not. So I make a living in like marketing, and it's the same thing. It's like a creative field, and it annoys me when you see people do marketing in ways that it's just they copy and paste, or they did what
Mhm.
another company does, or they send an email and it's the same email you've gotten from a million other companies. It's like it's the same premise as a joke, as songwriting. And I always like say this about marketing. It's like, if you're gonna send a marketing email, like, it better damn well be different from the other 200 emails they're getting that day. Like, that's the key to it.
Yeah.
And that's it's the same thing with songwriting. Like, one of the lyrics I was listening to today, there's a couple things that like I just stood out to me as that encapsulated like something that we all feel, but just said in a way that was different. There's a couple Pearl Jam lyrics I heard that I was just like, oh my God, those are brilliant. Is numbers keep falling on the calendar's floor, and just that imagery of like just time passing. Like, we
That's a
all
great
relate to
line.
that.
That's
Yeah.
that's a fantastic line, and it
Yeah. And
reminds me of a line, a very similar line insofar as the tone of it was. I listened to a song recently, and it said like, he's talking about, the singer's talking about an ex relationship, and he says, "It's not that I don't care anymore, but time changes locks on a lot of doors." And I just thought, like, yeah, it's the
yeah.
same sort of thing, like that feeling of time just falling away and changing. But
Yeah.
I think you're right. I think the problem with Eddie Vedder not getting the credit he does as a lyricist is, I think too many people get caught up in the hype of Pearl Jam,
Yes.
and whether or not they were the best band from Seattle in the 90s, or whether or not they should have gone to war with Ticketmaster, or did enough, or did too
Yeah.
much, or whatever. And like, because they're such a huge entity, like they're almost bigger than life. And I think sometimes, and music fans particularly, I don't like to use the word music snobs, but a lot of people who are really close to music tend to be sort of music snobbish.
Yeah.
And when a band achieves the heights of a band like Pearl Jam, the inclination is to slough them off. Well,
Yeah.
they're not even sellouts, but they're like, they're for the masses. I'm cooler than that, and I'm way more down the rabbit hole of indie stuff or whatever.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's fair, because I think, but there are a lot of great bands, and I mean great bands, that no one has ever heard of. And there's a lot of really famous bands that are garbage.
Yeah.
But I think if you're going to agree to that, you also have to admit that there's a lot of indie bands that are garbage, and there's a
Yep.
lot of famous bands that are really good. It's just, because I think if you're just like every band that makes it sucks, well, come on, forget about it. You know what I mean?
Literally comes down to luck. Like some of the great bands some of the bands that were actually good were lucky, and some of them that were really good weren't.
Yeah, it's
Same thing. The
timing.
crap ones
It's
were lucky.
it's who your team is. It's who your record company is, and who at the record company happens to get behind you. It's who your manager is. Who your manager knows. You know who your. You know, one of the hardest things to find is a good booking agent. You know why? Because they go through people with established managers, and they go with people. And the fact is, there's more bands than there are audiences for said bands.
Yes.
I think. And a lot are going to get left out in the cold. But excuse me, the flip side of that is I hate when people talk negatively about the Foo Fighters. And they're like, oh, Dave Grohl, and you're like, are you kidding me? Like the guy, he does everything right, you know. And again, do I need to own all 12 Foo Fighters records? No. I mean, I was kind of satisfied after the first 3 or 4, 2 or 3, whatever it was. But they're great. They're great records.
Yeah.
He seems like a good dude. I don't know why people just they want to slag off Eddie Vedder, or they want to slag off Dave Grohl. It's like, well, it like when I was growing up, when I was very young, I loved the Goo Goo Dolls, loved them, and when they would come through Toronto, it was packed. But a club. It was a small club. And everyone, the deal with those guys were like, why aren't these guys huge? Why aren't these guys huge? Why? Well, and then they get huge, and everyone who used to be at those shows are like, they suck now.
Yep. That
really?
always happens. Yep. Yeah. Like it's so weird how that model operates too. Is like, I remember hearing stories about. I lived in Dayton for a long time, Dayton, Ohio, and that's where Guided by Voices is from. And I don't know if you know the story about Guided by Voices, or if like other people know the story, but like Robert Pollard was a teacher, like an elementary school teacher in Dayton.
I didn't know that. I knew he was a baseball player of some.
Yes, he played baseball at Wright State University in Dayton. Right. And I mean, the dude, if you get a chance to read the book, the biography on Guided by Voices, it's just insane. And he is one of the biggest like rock star characters ever. And I mean, the guy keeps a cooler of beer on stage when he plays, and he gets smashed. And he says he's not an alcoholic; he's a professional drinker. So, but I mean, amazing songwriter, and you could see how like Guided by Voices music wasn't for everybody, but he like paid for studio time, did all this stuff, and like would play all around Dayton, and nobody would show up. He started recording music in his basement, and they'd play all the time at like the little bar in Dayton. The Canal Street Tavern or something like that. And nobody would show up. And there was one of their little basement recordings was getting tossed around. And that's where they kind of started the whole lo-fi thing. Right. And it was getting passed around up in all these different record stores. It got to New York, and there was a music festival, and they wanted Guided by Voices to play, called him up, and he's like, why? Nobody's going to come. And they played to like a sold out crowd. Meanwhile, nobody in Dayton is going to see him. And then years later, as that progressed, like they're on the cover of Rolling Stone magazine and all this stuff. And suddenly everybody in Dayton was like, oh yeah, I used to go to see Guided by Voices all the time. It's like, no, you didn't.
No, you didn't. Like, well, it's funny. Like Guided by Voices are a little hit and miss for me. But the stuff by them I love. Like I love Hold On Hope. I think Hold On Hope is just such a beautiful song.
Yeah.
I think Chasing Heather Crazy I like. Teenage FBI gets, a little Weezery for me, but it's still pretty good.
Yeah. There's also like 45 versions of all these songs too that they do, which 100%. It depends on the version.
Dude is a straight up alcoholic. Yeah. As someone who saw them in concert, like that guy just gets absolutely ripped. And I say that with some authority as I drink, a water glass full of whiskey.
I took my parents to go see Guided by Voices one time.
Wow.
Yeah, it was funny.
My parents won't even come to us.
Yeah, I mean, they're like the same age. They were like the same age as Robert Pollard, and it was funny.
Is he that much older?
He didn't become like a quote unquote rock star until he was 35.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So he's like a hero for like everybody who's like middle-aged that, hasn't made it yet. It's like Pollard did it. But yeah, I think he's in his 60s now.
Oh wow, I didn't even know that.
Yeah. He's rocking the white hair. I think he still does the high leg kicks and everything. But
Yeah, I saw them well, I want to say not long ago, but it's probably 10 years ago now. I thought they were great. Like I really liked them. So
they're amazing live. Yeah. He puts on a show. I got to see him open. Speaking of, I saw him open for Pearl Jam.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and Eddie Vedder came out and sang with him on one of his songs, and then he did Bob O'Reilly with them at the end, and we was just hammered drunk.
I just missed seeing Pearl Jam open for Buffalo Tom.
Oh,
it would have been. I think it was on the Buffalo Tom Let Me Come Over tour, and Pearl Jam were the opening act on that tour.
Yeah,
and I didn't go for whatever reason. I can't remember. I was going to see a lot of shows back then, and and then I ended up interviewing Chris Colburn from Buffalo Tom. When I was in journalism school. You write for these little dipshit magazines, and I just remember he was talking about, he goes, Pearl Jam used to open for us, and I said, any shot that they're going to bring you out, and he goes, yeah, doesn't look like it.
Wow, that's funny. They before the world shut down, they played Fenway and brought Bill out to play Taillights Fade.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I had actually, unfortunately, I'd never heard of Buffalo Tom before. I may have heard of him, but I never listened to him. And I heard that song from them. That's now one of my favorite songs ever. I love that.
I will go on record saying Buffalo Tom is one of my favorite bands. Well, of the 90s for sure, and probably of all time. I have no idea how this happened, but somewhere along the line, I got the email address of Bill Janovitz. I don't know how I got it or why I got it, but I remember I had it. And I remember when Buffalo Tom announced they were breaking up, I think of the audacity of this guy. I'm like nobody. And I just email him. I give him this long diatribe about why they shouldn't break up because they're such a great band and blah, 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 blah. And like, he must be reading this going like, who the hell are you? Like, you don't know what's going on. I'm like, anyway, he just wrote me an email back and just said, thanks.
Really?
Yeah.
At least he responded.
Oh yeah, I know. It was. I thought it was really funny anyway.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Oh, go ahead. What were you gonna say?
Well, I was just gonna say it's just funny because I tagged him on a ton of stuff on Twitter. Because again, like the guys on Twitter, I shouldn't say guys, the people on Twitter that I love. There's a few artists that I absolutely idolize that are on there. One is Bill Janovitz. One's Laura Jane Grace, who we're probably going to talk about in a bit.
Yes.
One is the guy from Super Drag is on there. I tag them in all kinds of stuff where I'm just constantly just spewing out my undying affection for them, and they just never respond. They just don't care. But that's okay. I decided that I don't care anymore about being a fanboy. If I love a band, I'm going to tell them I love them. And I'm just going to, and it's not that I'm like, I just want to be positive in the world or anything like that. But to be honest, like as human beings, I'm going to get really maudlin in a second here, but as human beings, we have the ability as friends, as other artists, as family members, as your wife or a band you like, you have the tremendous ability to make people feel good. And most of the time we choose to make people feel bad, or at the very least, we just tend to ignore them and not care about them. So I really think that me personally, I need to work on my negativity and sort of like work on this sort of my default stance, which is to sort of be one of those people who ignores everyone or to talk a bunch of smack about bands I hate, which I do constantly.
Yeah.
I love hating bands as much as I love loving bands, but I don't want to put that necessarily out there. So I've tried online to adopt the persona of like, if you're a band I like, I'm going to tell you I like you.
Yeah.
If you're an indie band I think is good, I'm going to share your stuff. I'm going to listen to it. I'm going to follow you on Spotify. I'm going to tell other people about you. I'm going to retweet your stuff and say, hey, go listen to this, because why not? Because that's really kind of what it's all
I've
about.
tried to do the same thing, and
You're
Twitter's
really
actually been
good at it, though.
positive. Oh, well, thank you. Well, are you listening to this, Negatrons? No, I'm
The
just kidding.
Negatron guys
No,
really
they're
good.
good at they're one of my favorites, and I laugh hysterically at a lot of their tweets, like that seem mean, but they're
They're
like
not.
knowing that it's funny, yeah, because we'll be on threads like saying stuff to each other, and I'll kind of like be like, for anybody who doesn't know us, like we're totally joking.
We're joking around. Yeah.
But
No,
oh, good.
I was just gonna say because so I run our Twitter account. I hate doing it. I wish I didn't have to.
Yeah.
It's mostly just because I and I don't know if you feel this way, but like I have a hard time being self-promotional. I have a hard time saying,
Yes.
hey man, check out my new this, or we're so great. Like, please go listen. I would love to just hand that to someone else to do.
Yes, I
But
would.
so whenever we were at rehearsal, Mike, our bass player, and I mean, I've known Mike for, Jesus, 25 years. Is that possible? 25 years. And, he's always like, oh, this about Matt Derda or this about the Negatron. Like, he follows it all. And he knows who everybody is, and he kind of knows who all the backstories are. To be honest, he's a PR professional. He should be running the account.
Yeah, he should be.
He's also way more likable than I am. Like, everyone I know who has ever met him thinks he's the greatest guy ever. And he is. Whereas me, I'm a little more polarizing. Like, I'm a little more hit and miss with people. Like, some people think, yeah, he's fine. And other people are like, not so much.
Well, I'll tell a story about one of the coolest things like you did for me. That's probably the coolest thing anybody's ever done for me. So I'm doing yard work one day of all the things, and get a notification on my phone, and it's a video from Laura Jane Grace to me that you sent me.
Yes.
And you had also like tried to get me to open for her at a show she was doing in Chicago, and like the Twitter music community like piled on that, and I could not believe it. It was like the most support I'd ever gotten ever for anything music related. And then got that video, and she like talked about it like, hey, we're in Chicago, let's be friends, let's play a show together, and played me a song. It was that that was a huge surprise. I had no idea that was happening, and that just made my day. I was just sitting there like in my backyard like, what?
Yeah, it's so when COVID first hit, I thought to myself, okay, you know what? I'm lucky. This is the one time I'm lucky to not be a professional musician. Like, my livelihood didn't depend on clubs being open and us being able to go. For me, it's more of a part-time side gig or whatever you want to call it. So I took it upon myself. I thought, well, you know what? My job's going well. In fact, I was working like overtime when COVID first hit. It was nuts. And I thought, well, I'm going to support these bands I like to try to keep them going. So there's a band from Hamilton here called the Dirty Nail, and I bought tickets to their live stream and bought one of their shirts, and I joined the Patreon of like the Menzingers, and I joined Radkey. And in the case of Laura Jane Grace, I saw she was on Cameo, and I thought, well, she's going to make a ton of money from that. Like, she'll get that money directly. So the first thing I did was I bought a Cameo for me from her, and I basically wanted her to like, this is so tacky, and this is one of the things I hate about social media, and I hate being a part of it. I said, hey, would you give our band a shout out and say like, you like our band or whatever? And it was really early in her Cameo career, and you could tell that she wasn't comfortable with it. You know what I mean? Because she doesn't know us from Adam, and
yeah,
I'm pretty sure she probably didn't. She either didn't bother to go listen to us or listen to us and we're like, not so much. And so she gave me this great Cameo. It was very measured, though. It was like, they said they sound like the Replacements, and they said they sound like this, and very non-committal. And then she played a song at the end. But I remember getting that Cameo where she was talking about her band, and you have this weird moment where you're like, oh my God, like, even though I've paid for it, she now knows our band exists. So at some point in her life, if she ever hears the term Elephant and Stars again, she'll be like, "Oh yeah, those are the jerks that bought that cameo from me or whatever." And then I really liked it, and everyone I know was like, "You got to post that on social media. You got to post." I was like, "No, I'm definitely." It felt really gross and creepy to sort of almost what's the word? Like almost like I had her over a barrel and like, now you need money, so now you're gonna do my band's bidding. I didn't feel good about it, so we ended up never posting it. And then I got a few more, and then when she did the post about, oh, we're looking for Chicago area band, the first thing that came into my head is like, well, you guys are from Chicago, you're a band, you could be there in probably 2 seconds flat. So I did this thing on Twitter saying, hey, let's get Matt Derda to open for Lord Jane Grace, and of course the Negatrons jumped in, and Eric Linden, and this one and that one, and Simon and Joe, and if I'm forgetting anyone, I know I'm forgetting like a million people, and I have a bad memory, so forgive me.
I've never gotten anything like that. Was crazy. That made me so happy. I can't even tell you.
The Twitter thing I actually liked more because like so many people jumped on the boat, and then when she sent the cameo, I was like, oh my God, she seemed genuinely apologetic. Like she was like, oh, sorry, like this thing happened. And again, that might all be, whatever. But yeah, no, she's really good at them. And, in the same way that you want to spread positivity, like you got to be kind of willing to accept it sometimes too. And then someone's going to turn around and say like, hey, here's a cool thing because I dig what you do, and whatever. So yeah, I thought it was kind of fun. It was kind of a win-win. She gets a bit of money, you get a little explanation video.
And I totally use that as a open door now to like invite her to everything that I'm doing. It's like, what you told me to tell you when.
Oh, 1,000%.
So it's like, nah, I'm just gonna do it all the time, every time. Like, hey,
she's a big Weaker Thans fan. So I remember when we were going back in. So the backstory when you record with Ian is great. I like 10 out of 10 producer. But he's one of those guys, personality-wise, like he's not particularly concerned about your feelings at any given moment. Like he can be very curt. He can be very like, that's no good. Like this is no good. And he's not saying it to be a jerk. He's saying it because it's no good. And so I sent a message because to be honest, I ended up running out of things to ask her about. I said, oh, hey man, I'm going in and record with Ian Blurt. You might know him from the Weaker Thans, blah, blah, blah. I'm a little bit nervous because I'm not sure if he, really likes the tunes or whatever. And she sent this whole big, long thing back. The funny thing she said is, because in my message I said, I think he finds me really annoying, which I'm sure he does, just because how I'm talking to you right now is how I talk to him, but he's very stoic and quiet. And I think I just get on his nerves like there's no tomorrow. Especially because I'm always asking him like, hey, because he's been at this since the mid '80s. He's played with everybody. He knows everyone. He's played with the Jesus and the Mary Chain, He's open for Kiss. He's done it all. And so I'm constantly like, oh, what about this? What about this story? And I think he's just kind of like, can we do the guitar takes and move on? And so she sent me this nice message back, and she goes, yeah, he probably doesn't find you annoying. And if he does, like, maybe you are annoying. Could you try being less annoying? Maybe that'll help. And I just thought, fair enough.
She totally has that Westerberg-esque sense of humor. You could tell that's a replacement's fan right there.
And I mean, listen, I've got cameos as gifts from other people. Like I've got, from football players I like that I got for my birthday. I'm a Packers fan. So like I got all these Green Bay Packer cameos. These guys send you these 20-second videos. They're like, oh, hey, man, glad you like the team. Happy birthday. And see you later. I mean, meanwhile, hers are like 8 minutes long. She's like, you get a big story, you get a song, you get a whole thing. So if anyone wants a good one.
Yeah, she's great. I can attest to it. And it's funny, my wife just told me she was planning to get me a Norm Macdonald cameo for my birthday, which is next month. And it's not going to happen. Another great Canadian, though, by the way. I was a huge.
Yeah, he's from Ottawa.
Yeah.
I was just there a couple weeks ago. Tell me if you think this is a good idea for a cameo, because I was thinking of doing this. And tell me if you think this is ass kissy or you think this is a good idea, because I keep going back and forth. So is in the States. And do you guys know a show called The Kids in the Hall?
Yes. Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
So they're from Toronto. They were big here. And so there's a skit on The Kids in the Hall with Kevin McDonald where he plays the guy in the office who thinks everyone's against him. I don't know if you've ever seen it. He's like, someone's been dulling my pencils. So anyway, at the very end of the skit, he looks around and he's like, they're all against me. That's where Against Me got their name. From that.
Oh, really?
Yeah. She says it in the new, she's got a chapter, storytellers, whatever, and she tells that story. So Kevin McDonald from Kids in the Hall is on Cameo.
Yeah.
I was going to get a cameo from him for Laura Jane Grace, just saying like, oh, hey, glad you like
totally do that.
I want to, but then I feel like, oh, like that's so needy and ugh. Because a friend of mine, the same one that I dedicated the song to, I'm pretty sure is not online. My friend Tracy, I've known her since kindergarten. She once told me really recently. I asked her, I don't want to go bore you too much, but a friend of mine was filling out this form, which was like a personality assessment, and I said, "Oh, I wish someone would fill this out for me." And so she goes, "Oh, yeah, I'll do it." She filled it out, and one of the things she said is, "Yeah, whenever you get in band mode, you're so needy and always looking for validation," which is true because that's really the nature of being a musician. You're looking for people to like your stuff that you're putting out. And she goes, "You're not mad at me, are you?" I'm like, "No, you're 100% right. I am." So I look at a move like that, and I'm like, is that kind of like creepy and gross?
I will. First of all, I do want you to play one more song before we go. We've been going at this for a while. It's flown by, but a quick cameo story, and also plays into the fact of like how you can kind of like talk to people. Is the best advice I ever got was the guy who plays bass on all of our recordings is this guy Joey. He's the one who got me into improv in Dayton and turned me on to like The Replacements and Guided by Voices and all the music I listen to now. He was a huge like mentor for me in my life. He ended up actually being on Netflix's Queer Eye as one of the people they like transformed in season 3.
The first one or the new one?
The new one.
Okay.
The one that's on Netflix. And so he's on Cameo now. And I will never forget this because I was always weird about like talking to people that I really admire. And being in improv, Second City, the touring company was coming through the University of Dayton, and we went to go see it. And after the show, two guys, there's like this guy that was just like insanely funny. I just thought he was great. And him and another guy in the show were outside smoking. And I was like, oh my God, I want to go talk to that guy. He was hilarious, but I don't want to go be weird. And Joey was with me, and he said, how would you feel if you just did a show and somebody came up and told you were awesome? And I went, oh, great. But that's how he's going to feel. And so, from then on, that's always stuck with me of, when you see somebody, so like, if I meet somebody, I'll just, just keep it short and sweet of like, hey, thank you for what you do. Like, it's awesome. Appreciate it. Thanks.
Yeah. I went to go see, there's a band from Canada called Glorious Sons. I think they're starting to kind of hit a little bit in the States. I went to go see them, but I went to go see this opening act, who was this guy called Northcote, who was on the tour with Laura Jane Grace and Brian Fallon and all those guys. And I know no one was there to see him. And I went specifically for him, and I saw him in the club afterwards. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go talk to him because he knows no one's here to see him. He's probably kind of whatever. And I walked up to him, and I don't know where I get the chutzpah for this stuff, but I go up to him and I'm like, hey, man, I really love your stuff. I came here just for you. And in my mind, I'm thinking he's going to be like, oh, my God, thanks. He's like, okay, thank you. And he kind of walked away. It's like, what do you want from me?
Yeah, some people he probably internalized it. Some people also don't know how to accept it. Like,
I'm really bad with compliments. Like I've gotten better over the years. Like when you leave a show or like you're at the back of the stage or whatever, or the back of the club, and someone's like, "Oh, you guys are really good." I'm like, "Oh, thanks." And then hopefully that's like the end of it for me.
Yeah.
Whereas in the old days, I would sort of just like, hoodie up over your head and just kind of be a real nerdlinger about it. But the weird thing for me is like I've played guitar, I've played in bands since I was 15 years old. I still, to this day, know nothing about gear or what gear does or what gear is better than other gear. And guys always want to come up and talk gear stuff to me.
Yeah.
I remember we played a show once and a guy comes up to me and goes, "Hey man, what kind of tubes do you have in your amp?" I'm like, "What?" He goes, "What kind of tubes do you have in your amp?" He goes, "You have a Fender Twin, right?" I go, "Yeah, I guess." And he goes, "You don't know what kind of tubes are in it?" I'm like, "I don't know, whatever came with it. I don't know." And he's like, "Well, what about your board?" Like he's talking about my pedal board. He's like, what do you have on there? I'm like, you know what? I'm really the wrong guy for this. I pointed to our lead guitar player at the time. I'm like, go talk to that guy. He loves this stuff. Like he'll talk to you for an hour. I'm useless. I know nothing about anything.
Yeah, that's something I like. That's still kind of new for me too, where I was the same way of like, I just have what I have.
Yeah, like my amp makes it louder, I know
Yeah.
that this pedal makes it sound this way and this pedal makes it sound this way.
Yeah.
And that's really kind of all I got.
I've gotten to know it more now because I've had to adopt the lead guitar stuff and I've chased after tone. But yeah, for a long time I was just like, I don't know.
The Twitter guys know, like all of our friends on Twitter, there's some gearheads there.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah, we got it. We got a lot. So
group.
yeah, let's have you play another song to close us out. And also, I do want to say, Negatrons, you should get Donald Trump Jr. to do a cameo and say he hates the Negatrons. That would be hilarious.
I got Michael Cohen to do one.
Yeah, I was gonna say you guys did like some random or like some weird celebrities, right?
Yeah, I did. I had it in my head. I was convinced, and this just tells you how dumb I am. I was convinced that Michael Cohen, who, for those of you who don't know, was Donald Trump's attorney during the Stormy Daniels, and he was a fixer and all that sort of stuff. And I said, wouldn't it be cool if he did a cameo where he said how much Donald Trump hated our band? I thought that was the greatest idea that anyone's ever had in my life. And to his credit, Michael Cohen played along. Like he was a little bit, stiff about it, but like he did his best. He's like, yeah, Donald Trump hates this band. He hates everything about them. He used to complain about them all the time, blah, blah, blah. And when I got this thing, I thought I was holding gold in my hands. I was like, well, we're going to be super famous now. I'm going to post this on social media and it's going to get 80 billion hits. No one cared. Literally no one. It got like 2 likes. It was like me and another guy in our band. Like
I can't believe I missed that because I would have thought that was the funniest thing in the world.
I'll repost it.
Yeah, do it.
Media can handle the traffic, but I was so disappointed that didn't get a good reaction because, it's funny because Michael Cohen messaged me after I requested, and it was something about our EP, like something I use the word EP, and he emails me back. He goes, "What's an EP?" I'm like, "It's a record." He goes, "Well, why don't you just say record?" I go, "Well, because it's like kind of half a record." Yeah. And he goes, "So should I say EP, the letters?" And like we went back and forth for like 20 minutes. I was explaining to him what an EP is. Funny. It's so great. Meanwhile, he's under house arrest with like a big ankle bracelet on.
Still like obsessing over legal language. Like, do I have to say EP or record or?
Yeah, I have to be honest. Considering his background as a human being, he was surprisingly nice to deal with.
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of guilt there.
I think there's a lot of regret there with that.
It's the kind of guilt that makes you build hospitals.
Yeah, well, I don't think he's got that. I don't think he's got hospital guilt. He's close. One thing I did want to say before I play this too, just before I forget, is I was talking about my friend Vince's band who's opening for Lowest of Low this December. They're a band called Sour Landslide. You can hear their stuff. I think it's all on Spotify or whatever. If you like the Replacements, Husker Du, REM, that whole sort of late 80s alt rock genre, all kind of put in a blender. They're so good. They're so good. I was a fan of the band before I ever met them, and then we became friends.
Yeah, all right. And what's the song you're going to play us?
This song I'm going to play is probably going to get rejected for the record. This is one of the ones, if I was betting, I think is going to get kicked back. It's kind of
exclusive.
It's a little bit of a ballad, not really a ballad, but it's kind of slower. I just have a feeling Ian is going to be like, that's not you guys. So this song's called Unlucky. And it's about, a relationship that sort of is ending, and they're just trying to kind of figure out what happened. So much like the song I did earlier, and much like Matt's song, if you guys think it's a keeper, let me know. If you think it's a loser, there's no need to be mean about it, but you can just find some nice language for it. Anyway, this is Unlucky. There's 100 revolutions, never wanted in your head. There's 1,000 resolutions, everyone's been left for dead. But I don't mind, be the last one out. I don't mind. We'll say that we were just unlucky. We'll say we were just unlucky. Let an open invitation to be sated in your time. Come and changing about facing like a serenaded mind. I don't mind, I'll be the last one out. I don't mind. We'll say we were just unlucky. We'll say we were just unlucky. It's an honest indication, never wanted anyway. We'll say we were just unlucky. We'll say we were just unlucky. We'll burn it down, there's no hideout. We were so unlucky. Turn around, you'll find out. We were so unlucky. It's all around, it's over now. We were so unlucky. Go along, figure out. We were just unlucky.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Manfred, for
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. This is awesome. Finally get to meet you. We've
Yeah.
been talking back and forth for so long.
Yes,
It was
sir.
great to have our audience here and chat with everybody and be a part of it. And yeah, we are looking forward to that next record. Keep us up to date on everything.
I
can't wait.
definitely will.
Yeah.
And thanks to everyone, and thanks for having me. And I'll talk to everybody online tomorrow, probably.
Yeah. We'll be talking to you about your comments that we've missed while we've been on this. So,
All right.
all right. Thank you, everybody. Good night.
Take care.
Stay
Thank
tuned
you.
for Trailer Hawk next month. We'll
Hi, Trailer
release that
Hawk.
soon.
They're
Yeah.
excellent. Go listen to them.
All right. Take care,
Bye.
everybody.